Imagine for a moment a world without art, without dance, opera, literature, poetry. That world would be a very, very dull place.
And we are live. Today on the show, I am honored to have Master Daniel Pesina, a gold medal winner in international as well as U.S. sanctioned martial arts tournaments, but he gained notoriety for his contribution to the Mortal Kombat franchise. He was the co-creator and actor who portrayed different characters such as Johnny Cage, Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Reptile, Smoke, and Noob Saibot. But Master Pesina gave physical form to the creative concepts designed by the characters, including signature moves. Master Pesina has also done stunt work for a variety of different movies, including Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze. And he played a hitman in the film Book of Swords. And he also appeared in the video game-based comedy film entitled Press Start, and also returned for the short film the Mortal Kombat Fates Beginning, where he played Shang Tsung. Daniel is also a teacher at the Chicago, and I know I'm going to pronounce this wrong, so definitely correct me if I do, the Wushuguan School of Martial Arts.
Yeah, close. Wushuguan.
Oh, Wushuguan. I knew it was going to be there.
That's all right, Jimmy. It's pretty good.
Yeah, you know, give it the old college try, right? So
Yeah.
want to definitely first thank you for spending some time with me, Daniel. I love talking with folks who come from a martial arts background because your perspective on life is so in-depth and diverse. You're able to just kind of perceive a lot of different angles that a lot of people don't, just because you've had such a focus on discipline. So, I don't know, I guess, when did you first start practicing martial arts?
I started practicing in 1969. So when I was young, really young. Actually, at that time, there wasn't, when my father took me in for lessons, there wasn't really a kids class. There was I was going to turn 11 years old, and I had to join the teen class for 13 and up.
Oh, wow.
But it worked out.
That was kind of like a baptism by fire then.
Yeah. I was smallest guy in class, but, it was a martial arts school, like a traditional Shotokan, Judo, and karate school. So everyone, even the beginners were disciplined, so I was treated respectfully. It was a good time. It was a good experience.
Yeah. So let me ask you, I guess, what got you, first interested in martial arts? Was it something that, your kind of father pushed you to do, or were you a big Bruce Lee fan?
Actually, both. During the time when I was younger, my father and I would watch a detective show. It was black and white, and it was called Charlie Chan the Detective.
Okay.
Where this short Chinese guy would solve crimes. He was a pudgy guy, solved crimes. And during one episode, I recall him throwing a guy, and I really, really was like, "Holy cow, that's so cool!" And my dad was like, "I could show you judo throw." My dad was in the U.S. military, so he learned a little bit of self-defense, and he actually taught me my first throw.
Right.
How to throw somebody. Yeah. But I kept bugging him, and he was like, "I can't show you anymore. Really, I don't recall that much." And he took me in for lessons. I bugged him enough for him to take me in.
So then judo was what you first started with?
Yeah, judo, and as I said, Shotokan karate, and a little bit of Japanese jiu-jitsu when I turned like 14 years old.
Mm-hmm. So I guess which one did you, I'm sure you enjoyed doing all of them, but which one did you first fall in love with that really, made you want to dedicate yourself to that?
Yeah, judo. Actually, judo. They call it the art of the gentle way. Okay. It's use your opponent's force, and it was. I realized that, with judo, it really didn't matter on the person's side, because you can actually if you have good technique, you could actually throw people.
Right.
You know, naturally they can also throw you if they know the martial art. But you can get your lick in when you surprisingly.
So how long was it before you started fighting competitively? Were you doing kids tournaments? Was that something you were always interested in, or was it something that you kind of developed a yearning to get into later on?
Actually, at about 6 months, they had just an inter-school tournament, just the school, and I won first place.
Oh wow!
Like my division was up to 14 years old, and me being like at that time I was 11.
Mm-hmm.
I won my division. So then I got to represent the school at a bigger tournament. So
Yeah.
I went to a bigger tournament, and at that time I took like third place. So I was really I was really like, holy cow, I really love this.
So, well, I mean, I know this is going to be a pretty hard question. I'm going to have you try and remember back pretty far. So, just being, so much younger, do you remember what your strategy was going into those fights? Did you have like a certain kind of, focus on speed or swiftness?
Actually, because I was shorter, I used to, man, I forget what the throw is now, but there was a throw where you drop to your knees. And since the guys are taller, when I dropped to my knees, it would force them off their center of balance, and I could throw them.
Okay.
So there was a particular throw. Man, I forget. Like I said, it's been a while, but I would try to set them up for that. Get them, try to be like, they're bigger than me, so they would try to, get over me, try to muscle me a little bit. And when they did that, I dropped to my knees, which would drop their center of balance and use their own force, and I throw them.
Right. So I mean, I guess with that move, is that when you drop down, are you like trying to take out their knees under them, or are you trying to just use their force to spin them back and get on top of them?
Actually, it's to use their force to pull them onto your back so you can throw them.
Okay.
So it's close up. The technique is close up. So naturally, if somebody even at I think at the time I was like 115 pounds. Even at that, if somebody just puts 15 pounds on your lapel, it kind of pulls you forward.
Yeah.
It jerks you forward. So when they get jerked forward and I was already kind of underneath them, I'd flip them over my back.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting strategy, though, like particularly like being the little guy, it's kind of like football or wrestling, right? The lowest man will always have the most leverage.
Yeah, surprisingly, that's very true.
So when you started out with the judo tournament, now were these tournaments straight judo tournaments, or were you doing like karate tournaments on top of the judo? Or the kind of mixed martial arts?
At that point, I was only competing in the judo tournament. To do the karate, they were only taking brown belts and over.
Okay.
So unless you had a brown belt and were over 17, you really couldn't compete in the tournament because there was no like fighting gear. You weren't allowed to kick. You couldn't punch a guy in the face. And you couldn't kick a guy in the groin or the knees, but you can label a guy in the chest and in the stomach with a punch or a kick, and you were able to kick to the head. So it was like, when I saw stuff, it was surprisingly brutal. Those guys were really hardcore.
Oh, yeah.
Those old school guys. Yeah, they're hard.
Wow. So when you started with the judo tournaments, and it sounds like that was your focus. When did you start focusing on the different types of karate competitively? Was that something that you got into when you were a little bit older?
Yeah. Then that actually, I did judo, and I stayed there for about 5 years, and that school closed down. And then my father knew that I loved it so much that he went around and found a school in Chinatown. Mm-hmm. Like I live in Chicago, very like 10 minutes away from Chinatown at that time.
Okay.
I could jump on a bus and be there in like 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So my dad found this kung fu school, and he went in and he talked to this Chinese guy, and it winds up being Grandmaster Wei Lun Choi, who later on in life, Dan Inosanto, when Bruce Lee's protege, takes lessons from this guy. He's so good.
Oh wow. So that's a big blessing though, just to have someone like that in your backyard. So who did he train with then? Was he did he train over in China, or was he involved in some of the earlier dojos and schools getting opened up in America?
He actually came from Hong Kong,
Hmm.
and in Hong Kong, I think in 1971, he won the Open Challenge, which is basically what blood sport is modeled after.
Oh, okay. Wait, is that the one where Jean Claude had to? Oh, I know I'm gonna get him confused because I
Yeah,
always get all his movies confused. Is that the one where he like has to fight the old way, where he dips his hands in the wax and then it's got all the glass on it?
yeah, that's kind of like the Thai fighting version of it, but this
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like the in Hong Kong. But yeah, that's I think that's the movie, where he had that fight where he steps in the ring and they kind of just fighting to death almost.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that's the one where like he like makes friends with the one like redneck guy, and then like
Yeah,
the redneck guy gets hurt, and then it's all about avenging him. Yeah, that was a great one. And he's got like the
yeah.
two comic relief cops chasing after him, always getting lost in like the supermarkets and the stuff. Oh man, I love those films. I mean, there's just I don't know. There's just something to those like '80s, like '90s era action kung fu movies that like it just had a certain like attitude to it, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Too all action. It was all action. So people, you know, to the stunts in there were stunt work was a little harder to do because people were actually getting hurt
Right.
doing the stunts because there was no safety protocols like we have today. But yeah, it was that movie was cool.
So I guess let me ask you then, since you've actually been there and saw that, how accurate was that one in comparison to some of the tournaments that you see, in Hong Kong and overseas? Like, are they really in these like really seedy looking dungeon places, or are they more organized in? I don't want to say capitalized the way they are over here, but are they in more
Yeah,
like arenas and that, particularly like
yeah.
back
Actually,
then?
yeah, actually, they're a little more capitalized. They do have underground fighting, but usually that is more uh, when it looks seedy like that. Those are usually related to brawler type of martial artists, people who
Hmm.
don't rely a little less on skill and more on brawl,
Right.
on muscle and their ability to take blows.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like that. How what was that? I forget the name of the league. I'm sure you've heard of it. The bare knuckle boxing league they going over in
Yeah,
London. I think it's come around the United States, but I haven't had a chance to hit one up yet.
yeah, yeah. I can imagine those are very bloody. There's no rounds. You just fight till somebody drops.
Yeah. Well, actually, I don't know the craziest thing that I came across as far as like the competitive fighting. Have you seen the team on team mixed martial arts tournaments that they're doing in like Eastern Europe and Russia?
I've seen a couple. I've seen a couple bouts. Those are pretty good.
Those,
Those are brutal.
yeah, those
Yeah,
get
those guys are
brutal.
hardcore.
Particularly when I was watching one. I forget who the Russians were fighting. I don't know, it was some European country I couldn't even probably pronounce if I wanted to. But yeah, once they got to like 5-on-1, like they were just pounding those guys. I'm like, I'm surprised he didn't tap right away just to save himself the damage, you know?
Yeah, but if you step in there, you're expected to last. Those guys who
Yeah,
already know what they're getting into.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you: when you were competing, did you ever do mixed martial arts, or did you like to keep it traditional with only competing in one certain style?
Well, I did a little point fighting. I did a little point fighting in Sanda, and um, in my opinion, it's not really. I don't. Well, I don't. When they say mixed martial arts, I really don't understand that because
Hmm.
when I'm looking at it, when I'm looking at it, it doesn't look to me like it's mixed. It
Right.
looks like it's martial arts. And if you favor grappling, that doesn't really mean it's mixed because most traditional martial arts have grappling and takedowns and joint locking in the systems, in the older systems. So I think when people say mixed martial arts, they're mixing rules, and,
Okay.
and so that when you mix rules, it's more of a sport martial art.
Gotcha. So they're
But when I'm
really
watching a lot of these guys, they are doing just tradition. They're not really doing a mixed martial art in my eye.
mhm.
They're doing a martial art.
Well, I guess because like every individual competitor in that regard, I mean they'll all have their specialties, what they're particularly
Yeah,
good at, whether it's grappling, submission, kickboxing, whatever the case may be. And it's like I guess having guys compete against each other in different specialities, right? But I mean that's not necessarily someone mixing together different styles and kind of creating their own the way they kind of
right.
have it appear to be.
Yeah, yeah. That because already martial arts has been around for 2,000 years. So a lot of people who say they mix styles really are not creating like their own. You could create your own way you fight,
Right.
but you really don't create your own style because you borrow it from other styles. And there's chances are that there's hundreds of guys who've already done that.
Hmm.
So you're really not coming up with a unique style. Two, when I hear like the phrase like, "Oh, he's using a Thai kick," I'm like, well, that's not a Thai kick because all the karate and kung fu guys and some of the harder like Tang Sudo guys, the
Hmm.
Korean martial art guys, have that kick too. So it's
Right.
kind of
Right.
like I'm just kind of make the face like Thai kick. What Thai kick? That's a traditional martial art technique.
Right, right. Well, I mean, I don't know. I guess, a lot of these different cultures, like, they're going to develop their own flavor of different things, but, like, certain holds are certain holds and certain kicks are certain kicks. And,
Yeah,
the versatility of them, they're going to be used across the board.
right, right. And that's the whole thing is that's the flavor. The flavor just means like, oh, I'm going to use more elbows, or I'm going to use more kicks, or I'm going to throw more, or I'm going to use joint locks more. And that's just basically really not like mixing your martial art. That's just doing a different flavor.
Right.
Or what out and two, they should, because usually the flavor is what your body prefers. If you prefer throwing, naturally you have to have some kicking and punching in there. Otherwise, you'll take a pummel now. I mean, before it was very common for the grappler to win, but then all of a
Hmm.
sudden it was like the stand-up guys who preferred stand-up fighting adapted, and the grapplers stopped winning, and then you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
everything,
yeah,
it's a martial art. It changes.
yeah. Well, I mean, and I don't know. I don't know. I'm a big, and I don't follow it, necessarily how I should, but I got this app on my Fire Stick called Pluto. And what's great about it is they just have, I mean, it's just a 24-hour streaming app, but they have so many different channels on so many different types of competitive martial arts. Like you want, Taiwanese kickboxing, they got a channel just for that. And of course, they're, replaying tournaments and stuff from like the early 2000s, but just watching different styles and kind of being able to jump back and forth, it really helps you appreciate the versatility of it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool to have. That way, you're looking for something, you could pop it right on and go right to it.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. The one thing that I would add, if any Pluto executives are listening, the one thing that's missing on there is like traditional like wrestling. Like they have the professional wrestling channel, but I'd love to see some competitive college wrestling because you really don't even see that kind of stuff on ESPN anymore.
Yeah, those guys are hungry too. College wrestling, those guys are tough.
Yeah,
Yeah. Whenever
conditioned.
you watch it, or yeah, Olympic wrestling or things like that, those guys are hardcore.
So when you started, getting active competitively, how long was it before you started going and doing the international tournaments?
Really, I think the title international is funny because a lot of uh, tournaments, if they have one competitor from a different country, they call it international.
Hmm.
So the I didn't really start going international until about, I think 74 was my first international tournament, because they would have it was the AAU's amateur junior Olympics.
Okay.
So they had guys from all over the world flying in for the junior Olympics.
Wow. If that was your first time when you were doing the international stuff, were you focusing, more on the karate angle, or were you doing judo
At
competitions?
judo.
Okay.
Yeah, at judo.
Okay. So then I guess how long before you started winning some gold yourself?
Actually, I would be off and on winning goals. That you know, it's it's sometimes you win, sometimes you don't win.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is like that. It's all about competing, getting the courage up to compete.
Mm-hmm.
Because I could beat one guy, and then a couple weeks later he could beat me, and it's just everybody's practicing and trying to, get better and be better.
Yeah.
So I've won gold medals and I've lost like the whole tournament. So in the grand scheme of things, I just realized that I've learned so much just by competing and not being afraid to step in and just try to do my the best I can.
I feel like that's one of the things that's missing from, I mean, not only my generation, but definitely the younger generations that have come after me, is that, the younger generations, they seem to be afraid of failing. Even to the point that, I've met some kids who say that they're afraid to even try because they don't want to fail. And some of the greatest lessons you learn in life are through your failures. Yeah, that's where you have that growth. That's where you actually make, certain life changes or perspectives and how you bounce back and gain character.
Yeah, I agree. And that we need more mentors then.
Yeah,
People to
absolutely.
tell them, to help them calm them down and be like, you know what? It's not a really, everybody doesn't win. Everybody doesn't lose. It's just partaking. It's just like life. You got to jump into life. You can't be like, oh, I'm never going to go outside, unless, of course, you have some rare disease and can't go outside.
Right.
But, really, in the grand scheme of things, there's not that many people who have that, So, you get afraid, but, again, we need more mentors. We need more people reaching out to them and telling them, it's not that. It's just the act of doing. Try to get out there. Just with people creating their art and gamers.
Yeah.
They got an idea from the game. Well, you know a bunch of people. Try to get it done. So what if you don't? So what if you don't sell 1,000,000 copies? Just try to get your friends together and just see if people would enjoy it, or even if other people don't play it. If you and your friends play it and you enjoy it, there you go.
Yeah.
It's a start.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I don't know, gaming is one of those things that, just the entire game community, it's so focused on finding the next talent because there's so many indie games out there where you have, people that just get together and they decide that they want to do this because it's their passion project, it's their vision. And yeah, I mean, some of these indie games, they're only, 1 or 2 levels long, but just the fact that they were able to get together and express this idea that they wanted to, I mean, even if it doesn't become a big hit, that still makes you successful because you put forth the fortitude to accomplish it.
I agree, because just for 1 or 2 levels to create that is really flipping difficult.
Yeah.
That's a big accomplishment, as you said. Yeah, I totally agree on that.
Well, and plus, I mean, when you were, helping develop Mortal Kombat, you were at the dawn of, I mean, I don't want to say the dawn. I mean, it was a little bit later on, but it was still a new industry. Like you were at the ground level and seeing how these games, developed over time and how we went from, 16-bit characters to, I mean, these super detailed, almost, it almost looks like real life, some of these games now. Like I can't differentiate between that and a movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess how did you originally get started in doing work with video games?
Yeah, actually, I just came up doing stunts, martial arts stunts for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze. We shot in North Carolina for like 4 months. But I just got back from doing that, and probably about 4 months or 5 months after I got back, I got a call from a friend, John Tobias.
Okay.
And he's like, hey, I got an idea for a game. I work for Midway Bally's. We make video games and pinball games. And I have an idea. I want to do a live fight game. Will you help me with it? And I was just like, oh, sure. What do we need to do? And he's like, you know what? I can't pay you a lot, but anything you want to put in the game, we'll put in the game. We'll make it work. And what I need you to do is show up to my work, and we're going to record you. Bring my brother Carlos, who's Raiden, and Kano, who is Rich DeVizio, with you, and we'll film some stuff, and I'll present that footage and some drawings I have, and tell them that I want to do this game. And so basically, I showed up at Midway, put together some fight scenes, and did some individual like moves. And then John had some drawings of a few characters, and he took that. And he showed it to Midway.
Wow. So let me ask you, when you kind of had the ability to kind of, put your input on characters, what were your influences on what you wanted to bring with them? Was there certain different styles that you wanted certain characters to kind of exhibit traits of?
Well, the first thing that I wanted to do was John had characters drawn up, and one was a Japanese ninja.
Okay.
Because it's the late 80s, 90s, everything is Japanese ninja.
Right,
You know,
right.
Shokashugi's out there. I love that guy. You know, the American Ninja, I love that guy. Black Ninja, I love those guys. I loved all the ninja movies, but I was like, I really want to make this game unique. I was like, John, we got to change the Japanese ninja into the Lin Kuei. And then Tobias was like, Lin Kuei? I never heard of that. I was like, the Lin Kuei are these secret Chinese ninjas that nobody knows about. You know, it's like, so I explained it to him, and he's like, okay, I need references. So I took him to the store to buy the book, and he's like, okay, we're going to change the ninjas, Japanese ninjas, into Lin Kuei, which basically is what they look like right now, even to this day, but without so much color. Because naturally, ninjas have to dress all in black. Otherwise, they are not ninjas anymore. You could see them.
Right, right.
So basically, what you see in Mortal Kombat 1, especially in Mortal Kombat 1 and 2, is what the Lin Kuei look like if they were just all black. Or also what Noob Saibot looks like.
Right. Right. Yeah.
That would be what the Lin Kuei looked like.
Yeah, because he was the last ninja or Lin Kuei character that was added to number 2, correct?
Yeah. So that was definitely like so my one of the contributions was Scorpion and basically they named them Scorpion and Sub-Zero, the way they looked, and the mystery behind the Lin Kuei was I made them do that. I made John change that character into what people know right now.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I mean,
and as far as
well, I was gonna say, and those are the most iconic characters, out of the Mortal Kombat franchise. I mean, there's a couple of characters, like if you take your, not traditional Mortal Kombat fan, right? Someone who's probably played the games on and all, but really hasn't stuck with the franchise, and you ask them to identify one Mortal Kombat character, it is always going to either be Scorpion or Sub-Zero. There's just something that with those characters that resonates with people, and it's because of that real traditional look, in my opinion.
Yeah. Plus, also that was the time that, in the order we shot stuff, like we shot Johnny Cage first. So he's the father of all Mortal Kombat characters, because with Johnny Cage, we figured out how to make the game. We spent probably 6 weeks on him trying to develop to develop the whole, basically what Mortal Kombat is today with Johnny Cage.
Right.
Then we went to Kano. After Kano, we went to Raiden, and then when by the time we got to the 4th character, we started getting everybody started getting the idea that this game was going to be really, really cool. Originally, when we pitched the game to Midway, when I had a meeting with Ed Boon at Midway, they originally said no. They nixed the idea of Mortal Kombat.
Were they just afraid it was going to be too violent, or?
No, they thought it would be a better idea to take a live fighting game and give it to Jean-Claude Van Damme. So yeah, when I learned later on that, after we had the meeting with with Ed, Tobias called me up later and he said our game is canceled. They're going to try to go with a different game. It's going to be a beat 'em up game, kind of like where you walk around as Jean-Claude Van Damme and just fight your way through levels.
Yeah, kind of like Streets of Rage.
Yeah, exactly. And I was kind of disappointed because I was like, crap, they're going to take my Lin Kuei idea and they're going to make those the bad guys in Jean-Claude Van Damme's movie game, and I'm not going to get any credit for it.
Yeah.
but that fell through, and then they came back later to give us permission to make 200 arcade cabinets. So when we were on the fourth character, the Lin Kuei, the Scorpion and Sub-Zero, we started originally the main ideas would come from myself, John, and the actor. And then Ed would come in and look at what we're doing, and he'd adjust it so he can put it into hitboxes for the game.
Okay.
So, but he would look at what we already created and make adjustments. And the fourth character, the Lin Kuei character, we started taking ideas right from the get-go from the actual company, as opposed to just myself and John, or myself and Rich, or myself and John and Carlos, that combination. So I think that's why they became very, very powerful, because people wanted to make them really, really cool characters.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's just something super mysterious about them as well. But just to backtrack, so after the Jean-Claude Van Damme game was canceled, is that where you guys really got the inspiration to try and make Johnny Cage the perfect satire on Jean-Claude Van Damme?
Actually, we already had that Daniel Rad character, Michael Grimm.
Okay.
But since when we were filming, John asked me, "Hey, Ed really likes Jean-Claude Van Damme. We have to put some moves to make fun of him." And I was like, "Yeah, John, I'm not going to do it."
Like the splits?
Yeah. Well, what happens is, he needed me to make the game. Without me, because John and Ed don't know any martial arts, so without me, there's no martial art or fighting game.
Yeah.
So John was like, "I'll buy you pizza if you do these moves. I'll buy you pizza." So basically, I was like, "Okay, I'll do it." So I made fun of Jean-Claude Van Damme with the bribery of pizza.
So please tell me that that even in the Mortal Kombat movie where he falls down to do the splits and then punches Gordo in the balls, that's gotta be a rip on Van Damme, because every single Van Damme movie there's that scene where they're pulling his legs apart with the ropes,
Yeah. Actually, you're correct. That's a satire of Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Oh man, that's going. I mean, that just makes that character so potent for its time too. You know what I mean? Because even though Liu Kang kind of gets the star treatment, I don't know. I always wanted to play as Johnny Cage. He was always the coolest guy because he's got the sunglasses. Yeah.
He's got the attitude, the sunglasses. He's got the skill set. Yeah, it was a fun character to create.
So when you guys were in the creative process, was there any certain kind of outlooks, philosophies, or kind of backstory that you wanted to specifically add to certain characters?
Actually, most of the backstory, John had some light backstory. Kano was Japanese, half American, half Japanese ninja assassin.
Okay.
And so him and his example, then Rich DeVizio, Kano, would develop that whole personality, kind of walked out and would just, because it was easier for him to just do that, as opposed to, no, we didn't really have an idea how to make the game.
Mm-hmm.
At the beginning, we would tape over moves that we didn't use. So the original footage of making of Mortal Kombat is lost because we taped over that.
What?
So there's about 60 hours, probably 50 or 60 hours that's not, nobody will ever see, because in order to save money, we erased that and taped over it to use for other things.
Yeah.
So when we would just start goofing around and making the character. So, Rich would come out and he'd use his knives. We were even for the first game, we wanted weapons in the first game, but we didn't just have the technology to support that. So Rich would use the knives, and Rich would make these gruff looking, and he is really, if you watch them work, he is really Kano. When he does his stuff, he's got that Kano. I know in the movie they added Australian accent, but he is the one who they modeled all the other Kanos after.
Okay. So then Kano was probably, you said that was the second or third character.
second character.
Okay. So was Kano always supposed to be, I don't know, the bad guy, or
Yeah.
what did kind of the outlaw look come later?
No, actually, he was always going to be the bad guy of the tournament.
Okay. Yeah, because I always viewed him. I mean, Shang Tsung is obviously, the main villain, but I mean, I always viewed Kano as kind of like that wild card. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
even in the movie, like there's just something about him that you never really know what he's gonna do. He's unpredictable.
Yeah, he's always the mercenary.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, again, that whole persona of the stuff happened too when we were filming, and again, we would always try to use the best ideas for stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When we're trying to grow stuff and try to come up with a cool way to do things.
Oh, that's interesting. So then I guess let me ask you, since you really developed all the finishing moves of them, which moves did you specifically have input on?
As the game grew, I had more input because we wanted to make sure, since we're all friends and studied the same martial arts circle,
Mm-hmm.
it was important for each character to look a little bit different.
Okay.
And since we're all basically from the same style, it was difficult to do. So I was there to kind of make sure that the conveying of the ideas to make the game was easy, and also to be like, oh, somebody's already done that move. We got to change that move, and I would come up with a way to change move.
Yeah.
So an example is like Sonya's kiss of death. You know how she gives you the kiss of death.
Yeah.
I created that.
Okay, so it was, did you originally have the idea of have the influence of trying to put out all those different special powers and abilities, and I mean, is that kind of related to certain kind of martial arts lore?
Actually, she is the only female character, and when we were filming, John was like, "Okay, Daniel, we need a way to, we need a finishing move."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Oh, we have to do a kiss of death because she's the only one, and she'll kiss you, and she'll blow you a kiss, and you'll go up in flames."
Yeah.
And like that, and also, for the first day of filming Raiden, I wasn't there until much later, just because I was working and. At my regular job.
Yeah.
And, but I showed up, and John was like, "Man, he showed me footage, and he's like, we're really having a hard time with this. He keeps on losing the hat when he does a kip up, where you're on your back and you fling your feet up and then you stand up and get into your fighting pose."
Right.
He's like, the hat. He's like, maybe I can cut and paste the hat on there, or I got to figure out how to do it. And then I looked at the footage and I was like, John, he's a god. He doesn't need to do a kip up.
Mm-hmm.
He can just stand up, teleport up. And John was like, "Oh, that's a good idea." So I came up with Raiden's teleport. So different things throughout the game where we're like, "Oh yeah, Katana Molina's fatalities, Jax's punching the ground. It comes from a style of Tai Chi, Chen Tai Chi. So I would just borrow things from there. The way I set up the way Shang Tsung steals the soul.
Yeah.
So different things, different aspects. I was like, oh, we got to do this, or change the way kicks were done, or generate the way kicks are done, or just kind of make sure oh, you can't do that move because it won't turn out because it's 2D. It'll look like a different move, but not quite as cool.
Yeah.
So just trying to finagle moves.
Yeah. So did you come up with that move where Raiden just dives across the screen screaming that because that's such a cheater move. I love that. I would always play as Raiden in the Super Nintendo version.
We had a problem capturing people jumping because what happened was we didn't have professional lighting. So if you jump too high, the top of your head would get darker because the light was overhead and it would shade.
Okay.
And it would change the shade of your body. So after jumping about 50 times, I was like, John, what if we got the general motion of me jumping and then I sat on something and then you could cut me out?
Yeah.
air like that. And John's like, oh, that's a good move. So he was like, let's get a chair. And I was just like, we can't use a chair because it'll look like I'm sitting in a chair. And so I looked around the room and I saw the staircase. And I was like, if I sit on the edge of the staircase, I'll have to balance myself. And it will look like, when you take it, it'll look like I'm actually doing the flip.
Mm-hmm.
So we started using this staircase for different moves. If you look at the footage, you'll see us balancing on it, the behind the scene footage. But anyway, John was like, I want you to pretend you're flying at somebody. So I got the staircase out, and we put like Carlos on the staircase. And the first time he was doing it, he laid on it wrong and he squished his nuts. and he let out this like that. And we all started laughing, and we borrowed that. I think they borrowed that sound for every time he launches himself, because when I hear it, I get reminded of him doing that. I get reminded of like, oh, that sound. So every time I see it, I get reminded that, like, oh, the first time Carlos tried to do that move for Raiden, he got his balls crushed.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to call that move the ball buster from now on.
Yeah.
So what other moves did you use that staircase for? Did you do it for like the bicycle kicks and stuff as well?
Yeah, bicycle kicks or any other jumping technique. Or if we wanted to change the way the guy did a jumping punch or jumping kick, we would try to balance them different ways so they would have like a unique look. So that way every character was a little bit different. So it wasn't like the same cookie cutter character.
Right.
You know, all the moves were different.
Well,
to give them their personalities.
Well, and I think that's what really separated Mortal Kombat from pretty much every other, two-person fighter game that came out in that era, was just how individualized each character was, whether it's the look, the backstory, the moveset. Everything's very particular and everything's very different, so you can actually create strategies with certain characters. And then that's what prevents it from being just a button masher where you're just, throwing random stuff. Like, every character has its own different approach that you can use while playing the game.
Yeah. John had some good concepts with the way he wanted the different characters and how they would all have different strengths. And again, when we were kids, we used to play Dungeons and Dragons. So there's a whole strategy about that, about doing that. You have your wizard, you have your ranger, you have, you pull in. Everybody has a weakness, but everybody has a strength.
Yeah.
So that's very much in the first game.
Yeah, and just that kind of thought that goes into it that you guys had. I mean, that's what really has a game like that stand the test of time, primarily, as the franchise would grow. So let me ask you then, how did you get Scorpion's move added in there? I mean, did you just bring your rope dart in one day and were playing with it?
Actually, we were looking for a special move, and originally, I think it was Ed. He wanted me to hold a lasso over my head, and then I would throw at the guy and tie him up.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, that's kind of like Wonder Woman. I don't know if I really want to do that. and then, because we were always goofing around and joking around with each other. And then I was like, there's a weapon, Chinese in Chinese martial arts, and it's used to pull horsemen off their horses.
Okay.
And it's a long rope with a dagger on it. And you wrap it around your body for centrifugal force, and then you shoot it out, and it goes into somebody, into the person. So I showed John what it was, and John was like, that looks awesome. We're going to use that. So when I was doing that move, and I was pulling the guy to me instead of like walking over to the guy tied up and then beating him up, I was like pulling him to me, and then Rich DeVizio yelled out, "Get over here!" And he made like this uppercut gesture. So too, again, a lot of people don't know that Richard DeVizio created or coined the phrase "get over here." And I know Ed does the voice, but he does it exactly like Kano. He does it in the Kano voice, "Get over here," because that's the way Rich did it when we were filming.
So I guess just to kind of backtrack a little bit. So how long have you been practicing rope dart for? When did you get started with that? Was this back when you were younger in your tournament days, or did you start getting involved in doing weapon work later on?
Actually, right before I did Turtles, I got started getting into that weapon. It's a little, it's competitive wise, it's one of the more difficult weapons because you can't use the same technique. Once you use the technique, you can't use it again when you're doing a form.
Right.
Two, it's always got to be going out, so you can't like just swing it around and around. You're allowed to do one turn before you release it. But then you can't do any more extra turns for 3 moves.
Okay.
So they want you to keep shooting it out. And I think that's the way they make it justify it as a weapon. Because if you're on the battlefield, you can't just be swinging around this weapon because other martial artists will see it and time it out and kill you. So you can't just be like, you got to be able to mask everything and shoot it out in a way where they can't really see it coming at them.
Yeah, yeah.
So it is so to compete with it is difficult, but to actually learn it like casually and to use it for a little exercise, it's not that difficult to do that like that.
I have a lot of respect for rope dart because the artist collective that I'm a member of, we have a fire performing group that goes with us, and I know we had,
Cool.
yeah, I know we had messaged about rope dart in the past because just seeing them put together they'll light their rope dart on fire and spin it around, but one of the guys in the group in particularly, Keegan. When they get like their circle set up and the people watching them burn, when he launches out that rope dart, like his muscle memory is so sharp that he can get that flaming ball millimeters from a person's face and just pull it back right in time, and it freaks people out every time, and it's so funny. But seeing the rope dart used in a performance aspect, oh man, seeing that done competitively as a weapon, that's just got to be a whole different world, because if you're trying to conceal it, I don't even know how you would score points for that sort of a thing.
Yeah, but too, it's on fire and you're swinging it around. That's a whole different cool skill set.
Yeah.
That's really difficult. That is actually difficult. I've taught a couple of people who did that, who wanted to learn how to do rope dart because they wanted to use it to burn. And I remember one time the guy came in with no hair. I was like, "Oh, you decided to shave your hair." I was like, "That's a good idea because when you light the rope dart on fire, it might burn off." And he's like, "No, I shaved it because I tried it with it on fire and it just brushed against my hair and it went on fire." And I was just like, "Whoa, man!" So it's when people watch it, you got to really respect those people who do that performance art. Yeah, those guys are good. Those people are really, really good and creative.
Well, particularly when you look at some of those performance styles, that they do. One of the outlooks on rope dart, performance wise, is what they'll do is they'll just tangle their body up in knots with the rope, and they'll get it really long so they can do it. And it's almost like watching a yo-yo trick in real time, right? Because they'll tangle themselves up in it, and then they'll get one little cool little swing or setup, and then they'll just swing it out, and the whole thing will just come loose. So the knot work in it and just the ability to use your body in that way. The kinesthetic memory that's involved with that is just it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's timing, and plus it's on fire.
Yeah.
Holy cow! It's brushing against your body. It's on fire. It's got to raise your heart rate a little bit.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Much respect to those guys. Those guys are. I don't know if I would do that because I would just I still do rope dart once in a while, but watching my friends on Facebook, I belong to a group who does it, and man, every time I watch one of them, I'm like, man, that's so amazing. It is just so. I really appreciate it because when I see it, I know I won't do it.
Yeah.
I am not crazy enough to do that. That's just a different type of skill set. I would have to drop everything that I'm doing and focus on doing that. And it's just so, those guys deserve a lot of respect.
So I guess we'll backtrack a little bit more. Well, I guess when you did get involved with doing weapons tournaments, I guess which weapon besides rope dart did you really resonate with? Like, did you really like doing swordplay or?
Yeah, I actually learned about 28 different weapons. I like kind of fell in love with the weapons. I know about 8 exotic weapons
Hmm.
that are not well known, but I've learned them. I've learned a bunch of different sets from different systems. But for me now, I really enjoy the two-handed sword, the long sword.
Okay.
I do Chinese spear. I've learned some we've had some uh, famous people uh, uh, that I'm associated with that are in my lineage
Hmm.
who did spear. Actually, yeah, it's funny. I recently took a seminar from a guy who was doing a style called Bagua, and he's like, "Oh, who did you learn from?" And then I told him who I learned from, and he was like, "That guy has the best spear I've ever seen in China." And he's like, "And I live in China, but I've watched a lot of people doing it, and your master has the best spear I've ever seen." And
Really?
I was like, "Oh, thanks." Yeah, I was like, "Thank you." But in his defense, we our great grandmaster was very very famous for spear play. So it's part of our lineage
Right.
to have that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So do that. I do enjoy deer antlers. Uh, there's
Well,
a
okay, okay.
it's
So, how do you use antlers? I have never heard this before. I have to get a little bit more details.
Yeah, it's an older weapon, and naturally they got more sophisticated with it. But in
Hmm.
the old days, they would take two round deer antlers and they would put them together like two C's with leather. And naturally, they're really sharp, and you could use them to block other weapons, and you can
Right.
use them to basically gut people. So it's a good. It looks like it would only be good short, but it's good long because you can trap a guy's weapon and you hook the horns around the weapon so they can't get away.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
could trap weapons too. So yeah, it's interesting. It's really really interesting. Very unique.
Well, that one with the antlers too, like particularly if you're sharpening them down, like you can file those things so they'd be the perfect size to go right through a rib cage.
Yeah, yeah, they'd rip you apart. So that's a cool weapon. There's weapons called the Judge's Pen, which basically looks like a Chinese brush for art,
Hmm.
but underneath the brushes you have a metal tip, which is usually poisoned.
Hmm.
So yeah, so it's a metal rod with the poison tip disguised as a calligraphy brush, basically.
So is that more of like a throwing weapon then, or is that more just like a get close and personal assassination tool?
Yeah, it's get close, and also because it's longer, it could guard you against longer weapons. Like you could block longer weapons because you
Hmm.
could use it against your forearm. So you could have a part guarding your forearm to block stuff, and naturally you're poking with this other side, and there's a weight on one end, so you're using it like a hammer and a knife, kind of
Huh.
you know, trying to put it simple so you
Yeah.
could kind
Yeah.
of imagine it. Yeah.
Huh. Now that is interesting. So I guess let me ask you: when you first started getting into stunt work, the first film, what was the first film that you did? Was it Turtles?
Yeah, it was turtles. I was actually competing at the time, and there was a tournament called Battle of Atlanta, and I first learned about turtles at that. They were recruiting people,
Okay.
so I first learned about the movie there.
So that's where you got recruited into the Foot Clan.
Yeah, yeah, basically, yep.
So did you get to utilize any weapons when you were filming any of the battle scenes in that movie?
Yeah, we used rubber staff.
Okay. So you did mostly staff work. Now, was there any specific fight scenes that I should look in or look for yet the next time I watch it? Because I've seen that movie 500 times. What's 501?
Yeah, if you watch it, I am in a lot of fight scenes. I'd have to be there to point stuff out because I haven't watched it in a while.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if you watch it, I should do that one time. Play it and be like, oh, there's me, there's me.
Oh, that
You
would make
know,
a great
because
live
again,
stream.
again, we would do the stunt, and then all of a sudden, you'd cut and then you'd be in it because all the foot soldiers look alike. You would be
Yeah.
in a different position to take the stunt again. And then we hired they hired about 50 extras that were in the background to make it look like there were always a bunch of Foot Clan, but in reality there were very few. There was actually 18 of us who would do the actual stunts.
Okay. So did you? So I guess was there any stunts that you remember really standing out that you had to do, like something that was brought to you and you're like, well, that's crazy, but I can pull it off.
Yeah, I think recently on Facebook somebody posted the making of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and Stephen Ho, one of the turtles, grabs me by the back of my head, and we do a roll. And as I'm standing up, he does like a spin kick, and he kicks me, and I fly back onto my back. So it's on Facebook a lot.
That one
when
is
they see it.
that's the scene in the
me.
junkyard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know exactly what scene you're talking about. Oh man. So how was the timing on that? Did you have to? Well, I guess were you guys allowed a little bit of freedom to do your own fight choreography, or did you have strict or a strict kind of format that you had to work off of, memorize?
Actually, Pat Johnson, the stunt coordinator, would come up with a basic plan, and it had to be loose because the turtles can only see what's directly in front of them because they're looking out. I'm going to show it. Looking at a hole about four inches away that's this big.
Yeah.
So if you watch the movie, you'll see us always moving around because we need to not be caught flat-footed and watch the turtle throw the kick and jump in the way of the kick.
Wow.
So so again, you had to have martial art experience to do that. It wasn't like a regular, I know, nothing against the industry now, but it wasn't like a regular person could just go ahead and do that, or even a person who had 1 or 2 years or 4 years experience in martial arts could do that.
Yeah.
You'd have to have people who had, like when I was with those other stunt guys, a lot of them had 10, 12 years experience. At the time I had about 12 years experience. So I had a lot of experience to kind of do that work.
Well, I mean, yeah, and I don't know, you couldn't even have a regular stunt guy without martial arts experience do something like that because, they might know how to fall right, but they might not know how to, actually do it in a way that has a proper form.
Yeah, you couldn't see the kick because those guys are quick. So when they're throwing the kick, it's not slow. They're throwing a kick. So we get having experience, I could recognize what kick was coming because too, they would sometimes change the kick because they can't see the exact position they're in.
Mm-hmm.
So they would be like, oh, I have to throw the kick in, I think in this general direction. And this is kind of I'm going to choose this kick. And we had to rush in and recognize what kick was being thrown and take it.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess like the whole first you have to be pretty trained to be a member of the Foot Clan. Like Shredder's not just taking any random youth off the street. Well, I guess even before you got your, I know I'm gonna mispronounce it. What's the name of the marking that you'd get on your head? The bandana that they'd put around you. I know there's a specific name for it. It's not like a guy. That's the belt. Well, either way, to get that, in the movie, you had to be able to remove all the bells off that dummy, before the smoke disintegrated.
Without making a sound.
Yeah. So is that actually a real thing? Is that a test that's been used in the past in any way?
It's been used in a lot of movies, but I don't think it's an actual real thing.
No, I was hoping it was a real thing. That would add so much credibility to that scene. So I guess after Turtles, did you do stunt work, or did you keep doing stunt work in different small budget movies, or is it just something you periodically just kind of come back to as the opportunities present themselves?
At that time, I did that, and then Ho Sung, the guy who did Liu Kang, got some money together and produced his own film, Book of Swords.
Mm-hmm.
And Common Enemy, and we shot those. And then I went to work with Jackie Chan in Hong Kong, but a typhoon hit and wiped the set out. And at that time, I kind of made the decision not to look for movie stuff, just because, when you're in the movie business, you have to wait. They just don't. You just don't have like a bunch in a row. You could
Right.
go like a whole year. You could go 8 months without doing anything. The whole starving artist, and that's why a lot of movie people or people who are in that entertainment industry, are waiters or waitresses, bartenders, and stuff like that.
Right,
They're
right.
looking for something flexible so they can leave to do the craft they love. But I was just like, man, it's just too far and few in between. I'm just gonna, not focus on doing that, and I'm just gonna focus on doing my martial arts, and kind of that's what I really love to do. So after a while, I focused just doing on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's where your passion is, and that's what you should be focusing on.
Yeah, I love it.
So when you were doing the Hong Kong movie, did you ever have a chance to meet Jackie Chan?
Yeah, I always tell a story. I saw Jackie Chan hand out a wad of $100 bills like this when we were walking into the restaurant to eat. He was just handing them out to people waiting in line. People would be like, he would hear like, "Oh, Jackie, please, I need, I need medicine." He'd like peel off $300 and give it to a person. He would just be giving people like money, like just giving back to the
Wow.
community. Yeah, really generous guy.
Wow. I mean, honestly, even though I found my appreciation for like Bruce Lee and like, the Shaw Brothers kind of movies later on in life, but when I was growing up, like he was the martial artist that everybody knew. Late 80s into the 90s, like he was the man. Even in the 2000s, he was still the man, even though I think Jet Li kind of stole his thunder there for a few years. But I
Yeah,
mean, that just kind of like, forced him to kind of revamp himself into, being, I want to say more comedic. He's always been comedic, right? But actually being able to deliver jokes and punchlines.
yeah. He's always someone that the whole stunt work and martial art world look up to. He's like he set the trend.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, even as far as like physical humor, too. Like, I'd put him up there with Charlie Chaplin as one of the all time greats.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, hilarious.
So after you, I guess after you kind of finished up with Mortal Kombat, and then you ended up leaving the franchise after the second game, correct?
Yes. Right as the second game was finishing.
So now I know there was some legal spats that you got in the midway. I guess what sort, since you were gone for so long from the franchise, and obviously for reasons we don't really need to discuss, you had your spats with them and left a little bit of a bad taste in your mouth, but you came back decades later for that short film where you took on the role of it's right at the tip of my tongue, Shang Tsung.
Shang Tsung.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what made you want to like come back and do it? Was it someone that was making the short film?
Yeah, actually, so, just so people know, when I did the game, we were supposed to do 200 arcade games.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it wound up that it was really, really good, they told me they're going to make, pre-sold 10,000 games. So I mentioned to John and Ed that, hey, you guys promised me we're only going to do 200 games. Now we're going to make all these games. And basically they told me, don't worry, they're going to give you a bonus. And so eventually it was going to go to the home game. And then and I brought it up to them, hey, it's going to go home. And they're like, oh, don't worry, the company's going to give you a bonus. Don't worry. So right at the end of 2, I realized, when I had a meeting with the owners, that they were like, well, are these promises in writing? And naturally the promises weren't in writing.
Right.
It's just the way we did it. And some people stayed, some people left, some people, got to wanted to work in the gaming industry more than I did. So they stayed.
Right.
And other of the crew left. So years later, I just was like, I was doing a few events, and a friend of mine was like, hey, did you see this? They're going to do a movie, and I know these people. Would you help them? And I was like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, well, you help them make the movie. Maybe you'd be fight choreographer or something like that.
Yeah.
Or kind of, support the movie because that way that, they're doing a GoFundMe. And so I was like, sure, I'll do that. So Victoria and Chris, the producer and creator of this movie, reached out to me, and I talked to him, and I arranged to go and do the fight choreography for this game. I was going to fly in one day early before filming, spend 2 or 3 hours putting together some fight scenes, and then, be on set to make sure everything was safe and stuff like that, and be a fight choreographer for it. And while we were rehearsing, the guy who was going to be Shang Tsung decided not to be in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so now they're going to cancel the whole movie because there's no Shang Tsung. And so Chris and Victoria basically asked me, hey, would you be Shang Tsung? And I was just like, sure. But, when I looked at the movie, I just looked for the fight choreography, and I read over the movie, and I didn't really realize that Shang Tsung had so much dialogue in it.
Mm-hmm.
So they were really cool, and I had to memorize lines and stuff like that, and they let me kind of wing it and come up with these lines throughout the shooting. So we spent the whole day shooting this movie, and me dressed up like Shang Tsung.
Wow, and that's like such an Easter egg too, because I mean, you've been involved from the very beginning. So I don't know, did you have any input on both the Shang Tsung character in the original game, and then kind of how you wanted to, kind of develop and portray that character in the film?
Actually, the first Shang Tsung, man, I forget his name. There's a guy who was actually the first Shang Tsung that we took stills with to make the game. Later on, when we wanted to add more moves, we got Ho Sung to fill in some moves. Mm-hmm. But there's an original Shang Tsung that not many people know as, and his name escapes me right now, but it'll come to me. But when he was doing the character, that's where I took the concept of the Fates Beginning Shang Tsung from the first Shang Tsung. Mm-hmm. So there's the first Shang Tsung, then there's the second Shang Tsung, which is Ho Sung, then there's the young Shang Tsung, which is Philip An. So there's 3 Shang Tsungs, but the very original first one is who I modeled the other Shang Tsung from.
Okay, so you went old school with it.
Yeah, from the original.
Now did you get dressed up in all the prosthetics in that as well, or did you do the version of Shang Tsung that's old and he transforms into more of a younger guy?
Actually, they put a Benjamin Franklin wig on me.
It was a Benjamin Franklin wig? Okay, that's
great. And they made it look like Shang Tsung, and they kind of put the latex over my forehead.
Yeah.
And they put the makeup on and stuff like that to transform me. They had it was a really good crew, professional crew.
Yeah.
They knew what they were doing. They made me look old, and so the only difficulty was being in the hot sun with that stuff on. But you got to sacrifice for the art and for the movie.
So how long did you spend in the makeup chair getting prosthetics added on you?
I would say about a couple hours, 3 hours.
Yeah, that's solid, because I don't know, I've spoken to some actors, when they get in it, 8 hours later and they're still can barely move in their outfits.
Yeah, it's a whole different art. Makeup is a whole different art.
Yeah, I'm actually trying, and I can't announce it yet. I'm actually trying to get a pretty prominent makeup artist on the show, because I don't know. I've always been fascinated with just prosthetics, makeup, as well as just practical effects in general. That's the one thing I really hate about movies these days, is everything's just CGI. You never have real practical effects, and it seems like you never have stuntmen taking hits anymore and actually doing it the way it used to be done. Everything's just computer generated, and I mean, it just doesn't feel like movies are real authentic anymore.
Yeah, it's a difficult industry. I know they got to cut time, and they got to, and it's easier if the actor does their own work, so that way you don't have to have the extra people coming in to do it. So I can understand it budget wise, but again, it does lack something. I see a lot of action movies, sometimes, it looks like they're on a wire, which kind of is that, or a lot of movies have the same basic choreography over and over again. I think it would help if they got some fresh blood and they kind of retook some lessons from the old school.
Yeah.
Like I really like to see a martial art movie again that had people fighting like in the old Shaw Brothers, that new martial arts.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right now, when I see a lot of action movies, it's like all brawling. They do the Western style boxing, which was cool when Jackie Chan first did it 30 years ago. But I think it's a little for me when I watch it, and that's my personal opinion.
Mm-hmm.
For me, when I watch it, that's a little stale. It's like, oh, everybody's already doing that. Everybody's always doing the brawl fighting, the Western brawl fighting. So, I'd like to see something a little bit different, a little more intricate.
Yeah. Well, I guess, I don't know, is there any particular action movies nowadays that that you can point out as an example of, being good choreography? Because, I don't know, like, a lot of it, just how action movies have changed over the last decade or so, with the rise of the superhero genre, you really don't have actors that have traditional training in martial arts. The way, a lot of, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Jackie Chan, like a lot of these action stars of the 80s and 90s did. So, I mean, the fighting just suffers because of it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the first John Wick. Really.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they really took that. Though the second and third, they upped the ante. There's nothing like the first one because that's the original. For me, that's the original concept.
Yeah.
You can always add to the creation, but the creation is the first one. It is the ultimate one. Even though they're like, oh, they made it better. Well, you added to it, but you really didn't make it better because you have the base of the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, the first John Wick movie was really, really cool. I've seen some things on YouTube. Man, I can't recall the movies, but I've seen some work on YouTube and stuff like that where I was like, wow, the people on it are pretty good, And again, I like to see longer fighting sequence.
Right.
I don't really, for me, I don't really enjoy 1-2 moves cut, then 1 move cut, 1-2 move cut. I want to see 6 moves in a row.
Yeah.
I want to see like even like in the Umbach movies.
Oh, I love the Umbach movies.
Yeah, or Raid Redemption. Those guys, the first Raid Redemption, really, really cool because you can see how they strung stuff together that, they're doing 6-8 moves. Sure that they have the shortcuts, but a lot of times you can see that, oh, that's 8 moves in a row. That's really difficult to do on camera.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? I mean, I'm a big fan. I know this is, just the way it was done, in like the late 70s, early 80s, but I really love those action scenes that are just that one long shot. Like the best modern example would be you ever watch the Daredevil series on Netflix? Where they just have that one long hallway shot and the camera's just following him the entire time. And I mean, that fight scene's probably 5 minutes long, and then he fights his way down the staircase, and it's all one continuous shot. Like they planned the whole thing out and did it in one take, and stuff like that is amazing.
Yeah, that's a really tribute to the cinematographer has to be skilled, the camera guy has to be skilled, the stunt guys all have to be skilled. You have a really good whole team, a unique team to put that together.
Oh yeah. So I guess just to kind of still focus on movies here, I know you had mentioned the Shaw Brothers, and I'm a big fan of old kung fu movies. So what are some of your favorite Shaw Brother movies? And I don't know, which ones kind of influenced you as you were growing up?
Naturally, Five Deadly Venoms.
I love Five Deadly Venoms, yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that. We spoke about that movie when we were actually pitching the game to Ed and Midway, how we wanted to have Mortal Kombat kind of like that. So that 36 Chambers, Gordon Liu movie,
one. Yeah.
Heroes of the East, again, Gordon Liu, all those old Shaw Brothers, Mad Monkey, uh, Crazy Mantis, all those movies that were that whole group were doing those movies. For me, is I never get tired of watching them. I could watch them over and over again. Later movies like Burning Paradise were really cool. Dragon Inn.
Yeah.
There's just tons of movies, like old school movies that are so cool. At least for me.
Yeah. I grew up. I was a kid in the '80s, early '90s. So Disciples of the 36th Chamber, like that was definitely one of my favorites, as well as I don't know, even some of like the blaxploitation stuff as well. Like I love that. Hong Kong Godfather. But I guess, were there any like certain martial artists that you watched as a kid that you I don't know, kind of wanted to imitate?
Actually, all those guys. Just wanted to imitate all those guys. It was so cool just to kind of watch them uh, do their craft. It was all really so cool.
Yeah. Now, yeah, I don't know. I was actually just watching one the other night. Have you ever seen The Five Elements?
The Five Elements, also known as
It was
Chinese
it was like Super
Elements versus
Ninjas or
Ninja or
something.
something like, yeah, Super Ninjas. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
an
yeah.
awesome movie.
That
Yeah,
so okay. So do you remember that scene where they have to that they're fighting the Earth Ninjas, right? And then the Earth Ninjas are they go down into the ground, and then they pull out these knife ended stilts, and they're like walking on the grass, stabbing them.
yeah, that's so flipping cool, man. Who creates that? That
Yeah.
idea was just holy cow, that's awesomeness.
Yeah, and well, I mean that, and also similar to the Five Deadly Venoms, the different elemental ninja classes, it just gives those characters their own particular style, right? And what makes that movie great is seeing how they overcome each one of those elements in their own way. Whether it's I think the water guys, they had to develop the special net that caught them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very cool, very crafty.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that also is just a testament to those kind of movies, is that, creativity with movies, the lower the budget you have, the more creative you have to get. And it really just brings out the best in people.
Yeah, amen to that, brother. That's again, MK started with a really really small budget.
Yeah. So I guess, let me ask you. I know we're getting towards the end here, and you actually have an event coming up. It's going to be a live stream of Scorpion versus Scorpion. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, actually, I know Chris from before Mortal Kombat from the competitive circuit. So
Okay.
I used to see him on competitive circuit. One year, his father, who owns chain of martial arts school, invited Ho Sung, myself, and the guy who's Kung Lao, Tony Marquez, to their tournament.
Hmm.
And man, they treated us like kings. So Chris and his those guys are all right in my book. Chris is a great guy, skilled, competitive. He got to do the movie version of Scorpion. So it's just I haven't talked to him in maybe 25 years or something like that. So just kind of just see what he's up to, talk about movies, just kind of just generally hang out. Because again, I think Scorpion's Scorpion, so there's not really, he could tell us about the movie and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and I could tell about the video game, but really it's probably more like reaching out to fans and seeing how they're doing during this time. Because right now we have the pandemic and everybody's stuck in, and people are getting a little crazy about being trapped in.
Oh
So
yeah.
this is a good way to kind of just blow off steam, just hang out, and just check in on seeing how everyone's doing.
Well, and that was going to be actually one of the things that I definitely wanted to ask you as well, is because you are a man who has traveled the world. You have studied various different types of martial arts and philosophies connected to them. What message can you give folks right now who may be struggling? Because I feel that, primarily in this era we're living, people are coming to terms with, the chaos of their environment and that nothing is certain right now. And, I feel that talking to folks like yourself and how you perceive certain things can actually be both reassuring as well as inspirational.
Yeah, actually, just to let people know that you're going to seem alone, but you're really not alone. Especially with social media, you could reach out to people and just check on it, and that comes to the point that we were talking before about competing.
Yeah.
People get afraid to get out and compete and do stuff. People are afraid to contact another person and say, "Hey, I'm feeling down." You know, but guess what? Other people will listen or support you. You know, I have a tendency to try to answer all the messages I get on my social media.
Mm-hmm.
So if you need to air, go to Master Pesina on Facebook, go to Master D Pesina on Instagram, leave me a message. I'll get to it eventually. You know, within a day or two, and just check in to see how you're doing or anything like that. And we are definitely not alone too. I think a lot of people forget that the way the world is now, we are a world together. Meaning a lot of people are like, a lot of people forget, like, I'm not near the virus. But you have to remember that we are global. Like my brother moved out to the suburbs. He lives over 60 miles from Chicago, out in the country. And he's like, oh, it's a lot safer out here. But he forgets that he might forget that, I don't know if he does this or not, but this is just an example. If he drives to the city for work, he's going to come in contact with 500 people.
Oh, easy.
And that's more than me who live in the city. You know, if in a daily basis, I might come in contact with 2 or 3, 4 people. So basically him coming in for one day, for a few hours for work, will come in contact with more people than I will in a week. And he'll take that with him because we just don't know what this virus is. So a lot of people just have to have patience and remember, just be nice to each other and remember just kind of try to do your best to other people as you can. And I know a lot of times you kind of forget that, but just kind of like, I got to take care of you and you take care of me, and just kind of remember that and just, do the best you can. Nobody's perfect. You're going to get tired of wearing the mask, but just know, like, guess what? If you don't feel like wearing the mask, then just kind of hang around at the house, outside of the house, and come in. Don't go out with other people. Well, and just kind of stay away. And then, kind of just take things into consideration.
Well, I mean, even Scorpion wears a mask.
Yeah, Scorpion wears a mask. Plus, please, Scorpion's parents are in their 90s, so I would appreciate you staying away from them if you're not going to take the social distancing seriously, because they'll get sick and they'll, I want to keep them around as long as I can, so I don't want them to leave too soon.
Well, that and I think that's one of the big, deficits that society has now is that and I guess it's just human nature, right? We never tend to learn a lesson unless we're personally infected by it because, you don't think, you're going to be susceptible to something. You're susceptible to all sorts of things that are not within your power to control. And sickness is one of them. And particularly with this virus, what makes it so dangerous is that it's asymptomatic. I've never had symptoms of coronavirus and I can have it right now. And I don't know how contagious I am. So, you have to keep other folks' interests at heart because, I don't know, I'm just of a mind that a rising tide lifts all ships.
Yeah, I agree with that. And two, remember, we're together. If you get sick, I will try to help you. So, and if I try to help you, then it's going to be on my clothes, and then I'm going to, I could pass it off to somebody else who's not so fortunate.
Yeah.
And I think that's the whole thing is like what it is. It wouldn't be bad if we knew things about this virus, but we don't know. We don't know that much about the virus. It lives on clothes for like 2 days. It'll live on metal for a day.
Yeah.
Kids who get sick now, we realize like, oh, when kids get sick, oh, guess what? It actually hurts their lungs for life.
Oh yeah.
Because lungs are a thing that they don't regenerate. Once they start going, Otherwise, you could smoke forever. Your lungs would regenerate, but lungs are not other parts of the body, like skin will heal. Your lungs won't heal. So if you get it there, you're going to carry, you're 8, 9 years old. You're going to carry that until you're 50, 60 years old. And that, in the end, might be the cause of your death.
Oh yeah, well that's what makes pneumonia such a debilitating virus to get is that if you get a really bad case of pneumonia when you're young, like that can stunt the development and growth of your lungs long term.
Yeah, yeah. So just try to be patient. And I know it's difficult and I know it's tough times, but we are on this world together, and like it or not, this is a global world and it's a global economy, which personally I don't really 100% agree with, but that's what we have, and that's what we got. I can't deny it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? For me, I have the things like being. I always feel like if you can, and it's of the same quality, you should buy American first. But that's not always how it is now. Now you get one part made in America, one part made in Japan, and somebody in Thailand puts them together, and it comes to the United States.
Yep. Yep. And I mean, I don't know. I guess the more interconnected we are, developing, from a global perspective, like it's a great thing. But I mean, moving towards that, there's going to be a lot of hardship in the transition. I mean, I love the idea of like, a Star Trek, kind of, utopian, world society where everyone's connected and, respects each other for our different cultures and backgrounds. But, getting to that's where the struggle's going to be. And, with the passing of every generation, new solutions become new problems.
Yeah, yeah. Like I watch Ancient Aliens. So one time they had,
Nice.
and two at the time I was younger, but Reagan one time said what the Earth needs is for aliens to come invade us.
Yeah,
Because all the humans would get together because we have a common enemy. So there would be no more divide. There would be no more racism, whether you're black or white or yellow or brown or any color, who cares? You're a human and we got to fight the aliens. So he really, and right now that's what this virus is. This virus is like an alien.
Yeah.
And we are the ones that have to band together to try to fight it.
And I think, just kind of going back to your stance on patience, I think that's the thing that society is struggling with the most. And we don't have patience anymore. Because of social media, everything is instant gratification, instant access to whatever you want. Primarily when it comes to martial arts, art, music, you have to suck at something before you're going to be good at it. You have to have patience and you have to have willpower to be able to put that towards a goal, or you're never going to accomplish anything.
Yeah, I agree too. We've been beaten down pretty good, by life and just by it. It's people need to remember that today's world is different than what my parents, like when my parents were around. My dad had his job, a union job, and I'm pro-union. So, and my mom had like a part-time job because she used to take care of us. But he made enough money to pay for the mortgage and to pay for school and fooding like that. And that's just not how we are right now. So people lose sight of that and get beaten down. And I know they are, just try to stay strong and remember that most of the people that you live by are on your side because they're in the same predicament as you are.
Well, and I think that I think that's one of the biggest problems that my generation, being a millennial, particularly has, is because my parents and my grandparents, they could get that good job and they could sit at a place and they could have a company actually care about them, and people will identify with that job, and it becomes, part of their personality, who they see themselves as. And I feel like generations now are having an identity crisis because of that change, because companies don't really care about you anymore. People don't have that baseline of an occupation that they really take pride in. And I really think that is where martial arts and different forms of expression and competitiveness can step in. Is that where people don't have a foundation for their identity through a vocation? Martial arts will teach you the patience and I don't want to say the skills needed, but the patience and the willpower to be able to develop those skills within that craft.
Yeah, yeah. Not to my view is like, as far as, I hear people complain about millennials, but it's just like they got to remember that one generation takes care of the future generation.
Yeah.
So whatever the millennials are not happy with, it's because my generation fell asleep on the job, and let something happen. For me, because I didn't fight hard enough, I am to blame for the high rate of having an education. Even if you want to go to trade school, that costs a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
You want to go to regular college, that everything costs money. And not being aware of that, I let it okay for banks to charge and for, other people to charge more for that. And, so when somebody younger complains about it, I often just look at it, well, how did that they're complaining, I should just let them complain because I didn't do anything to protect them from doing that because, all this stuff happened when they were a kid. They weren't the ones who can go out and complain or vote or anything like that. So that's my rant.
Right.
That's just my rant. Yeah.
Well, and that's really an inspiring message too, because that, at least, for people in my generation, that kind of a message places the importance on us in the moment to do what we need to do, as from a societal standpoint to make sure that those things that we lack are going to be there for the generation after us. I think one of the most beautiful examples of change is an old man that plants trees whose shade he will never sit in.
There you go. Well said, brother. Well said.
Well, we are getting to the end, so one more thing I definitely wanted to have your opinion on real quick. If it does happen, Conor McGregor, Oscar De La Hoya, who you got?
That's difficult because, Oscar's old and Conor does the martial arts where you kick and punch and grapple. So those are two different fighting styles. So, I give it, but Conor has, I think, matured a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I think that he won't take, because he's younger. I don't think he'll take advantage of Oscar, and I think it'll be a good show. I think it'll be something to watch, and it'll be a good show. And in the end, it really doesn't matter who wins because you got an old guy who I respect fighting a young guy who I did not respect until I saw him fight with what's his name? Mayweather.
Yeah, those were some great fights.
And I was just like, oh, he's kind of taking it easy on this guy out of respect. And you have to have a certain maturity for that.
Oh,
and not
absolutely.
Not be offended if you take it a little easy and the guy punches you in the face. Because you could get mad at that. But he's kind of maturing, and I like that. I wasn't a fan before, but I'm a bigger fan now.
Yeah, I think. That's going to be a good match, and I don't know. I'm really looking forward to the Mike Tyson Mayweather, or sorry, not Mayweather, the Mike Tyson Evander Holyfield match. If they do that one for charity, I would love to see those guys get back in the ring.
Yeah, those guys. Yeah, but those guys those guys punch hard.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's different. If you had that would be something to see. If you put Tyson in against Conor McGregor, now we got a battle going on.
That would be good. That would be good.
Yeah,
I'd actually buy a pay-per-view for that one.
Yeah, I would buy a pay-per-view and watch it by myself. Spend the money on it. But yeah, that would be now you're talking about a battle. You know?
So, real quick, before we go ahead and hop off, this live stream, where can we catch it at and when is it going to be?
This live stream will be on my Instagram page, Master Pesina on Instagram, and I think it is the 24th, 25th. I should have checked the date before I came on. But anyway, look on my page. You'll see it posted. We're gonna try to gear it mostly to to saying hi to the fans. So if you have a question, reach out to us because we have my friend Luis, who actually put this together with me. He'll be getting the questions to us. So it's going to be more about the fans rather than, hearing about what we're, just us chatting about stuff.
Yeah. Man, that is fantastic. So, folks, if you have ever had any questions about both the video game and the Mortal Kombat movie, make sure to tune in on that Instagram. I would just say make sure to give Master Pesina a like on Instagram as well. Make sure to follow him you're on Twitter as well, correct?
Yeah, Master Pesina on Twitter.
Okay, make sure to follow him on Twitter. And, if you're ever feeling glum and you need a reminder of a good finishing move, shoot him a message on Facebook. He'll be more than happy to respond.
Heck yeah.
Awesome.
Get over here.
Well, before we get on off, I just want to thank you again, Master Pesina, for joining me today. I think this conversation was very beneficial, not only from a standpoint of, getting to know a little bit more about the development of the Mortal Kombat game, as well as the different movies you were on, but I think you have a very interesting perspective on life. And, at the end of the day, folks, what we need to focus on in this time of chaos and this time of uncertainty is to be kind and to have patience with each other. Good night, folks.
Good night, Jimmy.